Hey, good afternoon, and welcome back, everybody, to this week's installment of Mark and Mark in the Midday. I'm Mark Weiss, as usual, with my buddy Country, a.k.a. Mark Littell here, and we have ourselves another one of Mark's friends, a great guest with us. We have Ken, Mr. Digger Phelps, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Yes, Digger, I'm sitting here, and I've known you for some time now. And we've known some crazy people in the game like Cuckoo, Timmy Ireland, and everybody. But I'm sitting here looking and reading about you and getting the dope on you. But here's the deal: you're from Seattle, but all of a sudden, and I do know this, Mesa Community College is a big deal still in Arizona. But it was maybe 2 or 3 junior colleges at the time, maybe in Arizona when you were there. Is that close or no?
Well, let's see. I'd have to tally them up, but most all of them were there when I played there. I mean, you had, the Yavapais and the Glendale, and they were all pretty much intact. I don't think there's been any added since the 70s. So yeah, they were pretty well established back then.
Well, Mesa's always carried a big name. And then you moved on to Arizona State for a couple of years, which is a bigger name. And you've played obviously with some pretty good baseball players coming out of that institution. And,
well, I don't like to brag too much, but if you take a look at that 1976 ASU team that I played on, we had every position had a major leaguer. It was that good. It's probably the best college team ever. You
got to name drop them.
Yeah, I had to name drop, but it's the best team that didn't win.
Is that right?
We beat the University of Arizona 7 straight times, and they won the World Series. They beat us the 8th time and knocked us out. But they were due. We were ranked 1 and 2 all year. But that's a story for another day. But nonetheless, those ASU years and the year before that, we were very good too. And unfortunately, they're not very good now. They've taken a step back. They need to get going again. The balance of power has shifted to the southeast for sure, and it needs to come back. But anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, who's a couple of guys you had on that team, Digger?
We had Floyd Bannister, who was the first pick in the draft. We had Kenny Landreau. We had Bob Horner. We had Chris Bando. We had Gary Allen.
Was UB Brooks with you guys back then?
He was the next year he came in.
Oh, he got there the next year.
He got there in time to win a national championship. They won a national championship in '77. But we had, Darrell Jackson. He pitched in the big leagues. We had Gary Racich. He was a big leaguer. We had Mike Colburn. He was a big leaguer. We had Bobby Pate. He played in the big leagues. We had Ricky Peters. He was a big leaguer. Myself, Gary Allenson. That's.
You guys were loaded.
Yeah,
we were really good. We won 65 games that year.
Holy cow! And you had Jim Brock as your coach, which was he's been there. He was there forever.
Late Jim Brock was our coach, and those were many moons ago, many years ago, and but great memories nonetheless. We still have a reunion every year. A bunch of guys get together. We go up to Laughlin, Nevada, and play golf and tell stories.
Who was your biggest rival back then? Was it Arizona or was it SC?
Well, SC was very good. Dado always had a great program, but that particular year, University of Arizona and us were really good. And, University of Texas was strong. Teams from the South, Southeast, Florida State always seemed like it was in the World Series. And there's a handful of others. Fullerton was always good. Augie Garrido had a good program at the time at Cal State Fullerton. The Northwest didn't have anything going on back then. The Midwest, nobody was really good in the Midwest. So it was back east a little bit. I think Maine and Seton Hall might have been in a World Series one year. But basically the warm weather climates had the best baseball teams.
And I think it still works that way today.
In '76, in '76, I noticed that you signed, obviously, with our team here, the Royals. And where did you go right off the bat, Digger?
Well, I started in Sarasota. I went down to Rookie League for a month, and I got promoted to Waterloo, Iowa. Played with Clint Hurdle and Dan Quisenberry and a few others there in Waterloo, and we won the championship the summer. But I was there at the end, the last month or month and a half in Wewaterloo. So started
the
that.
wall underneath Waterloo stands, right, going through the clubhouse out. You're remember that concrete piece we had a duck on?
Oh, man, it was funny. If you didn't like the umpires, you could lock them in the umpire room. It had a deadbolt on the outside you could play with, and lock them in there and, take off running. They'd be hammering the wall, trying to get out. Those old clubhouses, they have a lot of, I have a lot of sentiment about those. They were, they had a distinct smell about them, those old wood stadiums. It wasn't just Waterloo. It was all over the Midwest League. And a lot of fun, Nobody was making any money back then. We were just all doing it for fun and loved it. And
what's your first thing that comes to mind when I mention the word Clinton, Iowa?
Clinton, Iowa. Well, you know what? I got to tell you, I was only in the Midwest League for a month, so I might only
okay.
trip there.
You might not have played there.
I remember, Whiskey Rapids and those those nicknames for some of those cities. But what do you remember about Clinton, Iowa? Maybe it'll come back.
Well, the first thing I remember is that's one, if not the oldest ballpark west of the Mississippi. That didn't really strike me, but it brought me back home because it was right on the Mississippi River, and the mosquitoes with the smogger that they had to go around the ballpark to defog for the mosquitoes. So it made me feel right at home. So,
oh, yeah. I remember those. Yeah, well, you couldn't get away from those in the summertime in the Midwest. Playing in Omaha after that for a couple of years. And then, of course, playing in the Southern League when you went to Savannah, Georgia. How about those pecker gnats that used to just bite right through?
Terrible.
I don't know. Remember those sand gnats?
Terrible sand gnats would just kill you there.
Oh,
absolutely.
Man, you could have 3 layers on; they'd go right through you.
Exactly.
All
right. Well,
I remember those.
Okay, you were the big bopper, and you've got some stats to show it. But you're also the forgotten man sometimes with what you've done because you've done a lot, and you spent a lot of time. You spent 6 years in the minors, but when you came up, you tore it up just as well with the home runs. Your statistics on that are just you still hold an American League record for basically the fastest home runs. To get to home runs at with just 322 at bats. I mean, I'm jumping ahead here, but that's a pretty powerful statistic. I didn't know you were that. Let me
prolific.
See the pitch and it's going to go out. I mean, here you go.
It's nice that there's a lot of folks out there that keep those records, but you know what? I was just grateful for the chance. Finally got it. It took a long time. I spent a lot of time in the minor leagues. I hit over 150 home runs in the minor leagues, and before I got a chance to get to the big leagues. So, that the clock's ticking, as you well know, Diz, when you sign, and you only got so many years. And I'm just grateful that I got that chance. Some guys spend their whole careers in the minor leagues and have great numbers, but never get that chance. And I was always stuck behind somebody, and hard to overtake them.
I was gonna say after that year you had in Wichita in '82, I mean, how do they keep the guy down who bangs out 46, 141? I mean, those are crazy numbers.
Yeah, it's unfortunate I couldn't get to the big league sooner that year. I was really in a good groove, but I was behind Al Oliver. He led the National League in hitting that year.
That's true. I think you guys had identical averages, you and AAA and him over with Montreal and the bigs.
Yeah. He and, Al, what are we going to do? You tip your cap. Scoop could hit, man. He hit a lot of line drives, and he was a great, just a great hitter. Some of the hardest line drives I've ever seen.
I scratch my head as to how he's not ever in the conversation about the Hall of Fame with the numbers he put up.
He's a forgotten man. Nobody ever mentions his name, but, I remember playing with him. I mean, those years, I played 1 year in Montreal, And what a great team they had in place as well. I mean, Steve Rogers, you mentioned his name earlier. He was on that club. And Gary Carter and Andre Dawson, Warren Cromartie, and Chris Spire, and Al Oliver. And
I still can't figure out how that team didn't win at least one or two championships. I really can't. Other than the only thing I could think of is Rogers was the ace, and nobody ever scored for him, it seemed like, because he always went up against the number one guy from the other team. And the guys behind him in the rotation were probably like number three guys. They just never had that number two guy behind him, I think.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. You got a good memory.
I love that team. That was a fun team to watch.
I call him Rain Man Digger.
Oh, I forgot about Raines. Tim Raines was on that club too.
There you go.
Yeah, they had and Tim Wallach. That was a very good ball club. But yeah, we were a little light on the pitching staff. I mean, after Rogers, it dropped off pretty fast. You had Charlie Lee, I remember, and
Gullickson, Sanderson.
Yeah, that's right. Gully and Sanderson and Woody Bryant.
I think the big thing for that team is when they heisted Jeff Reardon from the Mets for Ellis Valentine, and it gave them that closer, but it was tough to get to him some nights.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was those were years ago. It's fun to talk about, but I was just a little part of that team. I got called up in September because of how well Al Oliver played all year.
For sure. Now, I was going to say, but you finally got your chance in the big leagues when you got traded to Seattle, which was, just starting to come out of their expansion years. Was it big for you not only to get a crack at playing regularly, but also the fact that you were going to your hometown? Was that a big deal too, or just part of the business?
Well, I think it was a great feeling to get a chance to play in the big leagues no matter where. Seattle being my hometown, it was a perfect ballpark for me to play in. Obviously, those early years in Seattle, we were all trying to find ourselves. We had a lot of young guys and not a lot of experience. And really, we weren't going anywhere in those years. I mean, it was just trying to survive and get established and become big leaguers. But it was a great group of guys. Had some wonderful teammates up there, and stay in touch with some. Harold Reynolds was a great guy on MLB Network, and he was part of that. Dave Valley works at MLB Network there too, and Alvin Davis and Spike Owen and Mark Langston, and the list goes on and on. There's Dave Henderson was part of that club, and Danny Tartable. We had a lot of good pieces at different times in those years in Seattle, but it seemed we had poor ownership back then, and they couldn't wait to trade you after you had a good year. George Argyris, those were the George Argyris years, and he was just waiting to make it, sell the ball club. So there was never any real game plan to try to win. That was pretty obvious.
It's good that you brought up the word trade, because it seems like the Mariners were always looking to trade someone, and their ready, willing, and able trading partner always seemed to be George Steinbrenner with the Yankees, because it never failed. Because I watched so many Yankee games growing up in New York. The Yankees would play Seattle, and somebody would beat the Yankees, or the Yankees would go out there and lose 2 out of 3, and George wanted half the team on Seattle and wanted to make a trade. And guess what? You were one of the guys that he coveted. He loved your swing, thought you were perfect for that porch in right field. How'd you feel about going from Seattle to going to New York, which was actually contending for the division that year?
Well, I was always, a Yankee fan growing up. We didn't have a lot of baseball to watch when I was a kid in Seattle, so I always pulled for the Yankees. And it was pretty stressful at the start, because I was going from a team that wasn't really contending to a serious contender with a lot of stars. So I had to do a little bit of adjustment there, but I always scratched my head when they made that deal, because we had a lot of hitters. The Yankees needed more pitching.
Exactly, they totally needed pitching.
I was grateful that I was a Yankee, but and I teased Buhner even to this day. I said, Jay, you went on to have a hell of a career, but when they traded me for you, I was better than you were. I always tell him. So I
actually remember seeing him in a game up in the stadium. I was sitting in the bleachers with my cousin, It was a doubleheader, and it was just when he got called up. And I think he struck out a couple of times, but then he got a hold of one ball and hit it into the black in the bleachers. And everyone there kept saying, that's the next Mickey Mantle. That's the next Mickey Mantle. And then when the trade happened, they said they just traded the next Mickey Mantle. It was very funny.
Well, you know, I was grateful for that opportunity. I'm sure Jay would tell you the same thing. You know, his day was going to come with New York eventually. But that's how the Yankees used to do business years ago. I mean, they'd have great talent. Their scouts did a good job of getting some great prospects. But, you know, they wanted those guys established by the time they got to New York, and a lot of them needed to go play somewhere else first and then come back and, you know, they'd bring them.
I think that was their philosophy. Their philosophy was their minor leagues was to cultivate talent so that they could package it and get the best major league ready talent back, guys who could help them contend. Except they never got pitching.
Absolutely, and they never did. They never did quite get, you know. Well, I think about the pitching that we had when I was there. I mean, Guidry was Guidry was, you know, he was good, but he was a little bit maybe past his prime when I got there. And Tommy John was the other one, and those two were our best two pitchers in 1989 to start the season. Those guys were 1 and 2, believe it or not. And you know, after
then you had this other guy. Then you had this other guy from the MLB Network who was really young and had like blister problems. This Al Leiter character who they never gave any chance to.
Yeah, Al could throw it through a wall. He was my locker mate. He was right next to me in the clubhouse, and gosh, you watch him throw, man, you'd see sparks flying coming up, you know, out of his one left his hand. It was so hard, and dirt would rise up. You know, it was one of those, but he never knew where it was going. He was just trying to find himself, and of course, we had Dave Getty, the old, you know, workhorse, and he
conveniently wild.
Well, Ray hated being in the bullpen. He wanted to be a starter.
Well, you know what? And he, gosh, what a great guy he is. I've had a chance to spend a little time with him. You know, he's just kind of the forgotten guy in San Francisco. He's done a heck of a job over the years coaching there with the Giants. But
for sure,
you know, Dave was a wonderful teammate, and you know, he probably would have been a great starter. He threw a no-hitter right against Texas, I believe.
I actually threw the no-hitter against Boston. It was on the 4th of July in '83. I was actually at the game. And the final out he got, he struck out Boggs.
How about that? Yeah.
Pretty good, right?
You know, he was really something. He was a great pro. I think about, you know, how hard it is at times to play in New York. And Frank Howard summed it up the best when he used to say, in New York, you're either eating filet mignon or you're starving. And that's the exact, you know, that's the truth. Because, you know, you got to win in New York. And
that's a good one. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the fans, the New York fan, if you're doing well, you can't ride a higher high, but if you're doing poorly, there's no place to hide.
I love it. You know, there's no middle ground. I really do. Looking back, I mean, when you're a young man going through that, that's probably why it's so difficult for young guys to play in New York. It's just they're not used to that. But when you get a little older, you realize that, hey, the fans are passionate. They want to win. And you want to win, and the owner wants to win, and you know, it's just a little different environment, you know, and it takes some getting used to. When you're out here in the laid back West and you head back east, it's a whole different game.
Well, I tell you what, I know one thing about New York is when I went in there, except for that stupid Chambliss home run thing, is when you know, there's the funny thing is, I was just sitting there waving at people, and you know, hey, how you doing? And they were screaming at me. I'm deaf in one ear and I can't hear shit, so I'm sitting there just smiling. I'm smiling and just everything, and I'm just probably pissing them off more. But it didn't bother me in Yankee Stadium, to tell you the truth, because I couldn't hear. So
that's a good thing. Yeah,
no,
probably
no
is.
Kidding.
You know, today's actually a birthday of one of your former teammates and Hall of Famer and a Hall of Famer, Dave Winfield. Dave turned 66 today. How was it like playing with him? Because he seemed to be like the best all-around athlete and one of the like classiest guys in baseball during the '80s.
Dave Winfield was you're right, exactly right. My experience with Dave was he was a quiet leader. You know, he wasn't a guy that, you know, loud talked or anything like that. When he led by example, he was a phenomenal talent. I think most guys were a bit awestruck because of his size and strength and his his abilities. And, he was just, George always seemed to want to beat him down, and I never understood that. But, he was just a phenomenal talent. I guess they expected more from him. I don't know. I don't know how much more you can get being a Hall of Famer. But,
yes, sir.
There were certain guys that, and there's a backstory to it, I'm sure, but there's certain guys that George just, got on, and I believe he was one of them, but he handled it very well. And, his career speaks for itself. He had a great career, and he's a great player. And happy birthday, Dave, and I wish you many more.
It actually started I was going to say it actually started in 1981 when he came over as a free agent, and he went like 1 for 22 in the World Series. And at the end of the year, the Yankees let Reggie Jackson go as a free agent, and Steinbrenner said, "I kept Mr. May and let Mr. October go," and that really started all the negativity with him in Winfield.
There you go. Yeah.
Terrible comment.
Yeah, it wasn't a good one. No, it wasn't. But it's not something that we're not used to. I mean, not afraid to mention now. Obviously, it hurt back then, but Mr. Steinbrenner was a very, very good owner. I mean, in a lot of ways, he was trying so hard to win, and you can't fault him for that. And he expected a lot out of his guys, and the guys did too. But there'd been better ways to handle all that, I'm sure, looking back. But you only get one chance to do it when you're a player, and
right.
A lot of times as an owner, it's very similar, But anyway, those are the times in New York.
Was Donnie Baseball a quiet guy too, just like Dave Winfield, another quiet leader?
Donnie was. Donnie was a guy that I played with a great. And Diz knows playing in Kansas City. George Brett was that guy.
Right.
He just wanted to be as good as he was. And he wasn't loud talking and a rah guy. He just led by example. And
George and Mac.
Donnie. George and Mac, they were the best. That was a great group of guys, and they really were. They were. That was a good place for me to start off my career. But anyway, Donnie was that kind of player. I've never seen a guy work so hard. I'm really convinced to this day, and he may say the same thing, that he took so many swings that it had an effect on his back. It shortened his career. He practiced so hard. He really practiced hard. We had one thing the Yankees had that no other team had back in those days was a really sophisticated indoor batting tunnel and facility, and also had a weight room that was like a Life Fitness or something. It was a great place. 24-hour fitness. It had every bit of equipment you could have. So we had all the extra things you would need, and he was able to go down and after batting practice, if he didn't like his swing, and if you could remember his swing, he had a lot of things going on. He kind of had to tweak it every now and then, and he'd contort and twist, and his back, he took a lot of swings, and he wasn't that big a guy. I mean, maybe 185 when he played. And I think it had an effect on him because he took a lot of swings. He just couldn't get enough swings. And then he'd go out and play the game. This was after regular batting practice. I remember watching him work, and I just said, man, this guy is something else.
Digger, who is some of your favorite managers, or who are some of your managers that stood out, Major League wise, where you landed?
Oh, boy.
I know you've had a few.
I played for a number of guys. I tell people it was hard for me to hold a job. I played for so many guys. But, I was only in New York, and in a year's time, we had 3 managers. Piniella, Dallin, and Bucky Dent. Bucky Dent for just a short, month or two, and that was 88 and 89. And then I played for Tony La Russa. Very great, very good manager. And one thing you learn from a guy like Tony La Russa that is interesting is he was always one of those guys that was out in front of games. He'd come up to you, and I never had a manager do this. He'd come up to you and say, "Hey, Max struggles with this guy tomorrow. You're gonna go ahead and hit. You're gonna play tomorrow." And he'd do that during batting practice, the day of the game before, and that type of thing. He was always, very, positive and very, just very prepared, I guess. That was a kind of a new twist for me. I never had any kind of communication with managers. We were all so afraid to talk to managers back in those days because I thought I was going to get shipped out. And now the relationship with managers and players today is like, they're big brothers or, buddies. It's a whole different game. And I think that the communications in the big leagues are a lot better now than they ever were. But I played for Dick Williams, and Dick was a guy that was the wrong fit for Seattle back in those days. He was a veteran manager trying to get a bunch of younger guys to play like vets, and that wasn't a good fit. And so he was tough. I played for Del Crandall. He was a manager. Oh yeah, and Del was a great guy. He gave me an opportunity to start and play. He said, "You haven't got anything more to prove in the minor leagues." He's the only manager to ever tell me that. He says, he gave me an opportunity to play in Seattle, and that was a great guy. So I played for Johnny McNamara in Cleveland briefly, and that was the end of the road for me and him for the most part. But I heard great things about Johnny Mac and as a manager, and I'm disappointed I didn't do very well there, and I really didn't get to know him very well. But oh well, and I played for Dick Hauser briefly in Kansas City before he got sick, and was a great guy. A lot of people liked him. I played for Jim Fry in Kansas City, and Fry, came over from Baltimore. He was Earl Weaver's right hand for years, and took the Royals to the 1980s.
You played for Billy too, right? Billy Martin.
No, Billy wasn't managing then.
So then you had Lou.
I had Lou. Yeah, Billy was a big fan of mine, though, from what I gather. He kept telling George that we need to trade for me, and eventually I got over there. But those are most of big league. Probably the most influential guy in my whole career, though, was a guy by the name of Gordy McKenzie, and he was a guy that I had in the minor leagues, and he's no longer with us, and he passed away. But a wonderful man who really believed in me and gave me that second chance when I needed it. I think, there's some crossroads in your career when you really need that one guy to stand up for you. And I had a kind of a down year and half a year in Double-A, and he was my manager. He says, we need to bring this guy back. I think he can turn it around, and I did. And it got me over the hump. So he was a great guy that believed in me, and I think that's really key for any player is. You can play for anybody as long as they put you in the lineup, right? If they're in the lineup, I'm sure he likes you, you like him. But it's a little different today. The way the guys are a lot closer to their managers than we ever were.
The one thing that you've got to be smiling about, Digger, was, and I know this because you came off the bench and you hit and you broke up the perfect, well, not the perfect game, the no-hit, the perfect game with 26, and you didn't want to make the last out, obviously, and you said, well, I didn't want to be on ESPN and making that last out, and on Sports Center and on Homer and Jim, I guess. Yeah, so all of a sudden you hit that thing out, and you had to be snickering. You had to be snickering around the base.
And it was against his old Seattle teammates.
Yeah, it was off of Brian Holman, and that was my last big league home run, by the way.
Make it count.
Yeah, you sure did.
It was one of those things. I hadn't been playing much. I got over to Oakland, and that year in 1990, we had a bit of a lockout in spring training, so we all got shortchanged on our reps, and I didn't get to play as much as I thought I was going to play, and so I was kind of relegated to pinch hit duties quite a bit on that team while I was there. And, Rick, some days Ricky'd come in and he'd want a DH. Other days Canseco'd want a DH. Next thing you know, I'm not getting any at bats. So it was hard to stay ready. But that particular game, Brian Holman was dealing for the Mariners. He was 26 up, 26 down on a really good Oakland A's team. And I said, man, I can't go up there and take any pitches. I got to get after the first one I see. And sure enough, it worked. That was my approach. I hit a home run, and
what hit?
That first pitch fastball a little bit up, middle in. I didn't really normally go after that, but I did that time. Got it.
You got to Oakland in '89 just in time for the postseason. So you got your taste of you went from the Yankees team, which was kind of, you know, I would say by '89 was starting to really decline quickly. They had a lot of guys who got old quick and they had no pitching. And then you get to this behemoth team in Oakland with these big bangers who are hitting balls like 100,000 miles over the fence and some good pitching. And that was the one team of the stretch that actually won the World Series. So you got a ring.
Yeah, I did. I got there just in time. That was one advantage of playing for so many ball clubs. I got a chance to get to the World.
So you were the missing piece.
Well, I don't know.
Right. Because they didn't win in '88, and they didn't win in '90.
No, they did get it in '89, and that was good. And that was subject to us getting the World Series played again, because after the earthquake in '89, there was a lot of people trying to get it canceled. And of course, we were up 2 games to none at the time, and the mayor of San Francisco wanted nothing to do with trying to get more to get the games completed. He had too many other issues with the earthquake and all the damage. But we resumed 10 days later, and we ended up beating them, and nobody was going to beat them in '89 after what happened in '88.
Right. Well, Digger, the other thing too is that you got. I notice you're sitting here, and I know you were an analyst with the Diamondbacks. Obviously, you speak well because you're doing it right now, and you're also you do a lot of media work for Arizona Public Service, which is the largest electric utility company in the state. So apparently, you have your hands full because you also do alumni things to help second chance kids out as well. So you've got a lot on the ball going here, right?
Well, I'm very fortunate to be able to work along with Luke Klimchuk and guys like yourself, Mark, and we do a lot of things. We give back a lot, and been very, very blessed especially by APS. They've given me this opportunity. One thing that Arizona Public Service has done here in our state is they've gone out and built, along with the Diamondbacks, over 33 baseball fields in different communities, Little League fields. So
very nice baseball fields.
Yeah, very nice, and really nice give-backs in those communities. We partner with the Diamondbacks and a player and ourselves, and between the 3 groups, we build fields, and so I was able to sell the idea that maybe we should do some baseball clinics at these fields whenever possible. And so it's just grown over the years. This will be the end. I'm coming up on the end of 19 years. Been doing
wow.
It. So I never thought it would last this long, but I'm very grateful it has. And doing something that you really love to do, as you know, Mark, you love coaching baseball and working with kids, and giving something back. It keeps us going and keeps us young, and enjoy doing it. I always you seem to appreciate it more and more each and every year when you get to maybe even work with some kids and see them get better and move on to the next level. And some of the kids that we've worked with over the years have made it to the major leagues. So that's a nice little feather in your cap sometimes to say you can have a piece of that.
Well, I know you've got a big heart about it, Digger. It's about helping the kids in the community, and I know APS is they got to be very fortunate to have you, and the fact that you did do some color for the Diamondbacks, and said your 2 cents, and you've really been big with us today. Just to listen to you tell all these stories that you've got, from the word go, and what a career you've had, though. I mean, it's just been it's crazy.
It's a lot of fun to get together and talk about the past, and the stories get better and better all the time.
Sure.
By the end of the interview, you think, "Gosh, this guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's pretty good."
We like to accentuate the positive.
Guys in the Hall of Fame wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. They didn't have guys like me to throw and strike out and get to, and We got to have some of those table setters as well. So,
yeah.
Because you and I are table setters, so, we could, some of those guys should be thanking us.
Yeah, every once in a while you got to break a couple ribs, though. You never know.
Yeah, that was true. You had the opportunity to do that. You could throw that ball through a wall. That's how they signed you, right? Weren't you playing catch in the backyard? You threw the ball through one of the barns there you had in your
Yeah, pretty much. This scout came by and I was out in the plow field and he asked me which direction. I pointed with the plow and he said, "I got to sign that boy."
That was right after when you blew up the tree stump in your dad's pickup truck, wasn't it?
That's coming in the next story here in October on Country Boy Conveniently Wild. That's my next book out, and it's I'll probably go to jail on this one, Digger. So,
I'll be doing the show. That's great. I'll be doing the show by solo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, some jail, Maricopa County Jail. With our pilot's not there, so nobody can charge shorts anymore. So
yeah, I know it. That's Joe would have loved you. He would have loved you.
Oh yeah, he would have had me I'd be managing the baseball team there. I'd have them all in order. What the hell? It's in a strike, baby. Let's go. So you're
no doubt.
Hey,
no doubt.
Digger, I'm gonna close this thing out.
Yard.
Yeah, right, exactly. When I only start here, I'm gonna start today. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what? I said I'm gonna have to throw it back to you, Country, because we're kind of running low on time, and so why don't you close it out?
Yeah, the closer comes in here, Digger, and here's what he does. He basically throws peas at the knees, no pies in the eyes, no wall balls, and you'll be just fine. Let her go and let her rip. Let's go.